Megan, Brian, Brooks, Rob, Alyssa, Michael, Barb.
Bassett, so moved.
Tote second. Aye. Tote so moved.
Shoneman second.
Sorry. Thank you. Anybody can get up and talk about anything for 5 minutes. If you're here to talk about an agenda item, we would ask that you wait until we're at that part of our meeting. But if you have something to talk about that isn't on the agenda, now's your time. Anyone? Okay. Oh, yep. Come on up. Oh, sure. There's the microphone there, and if you press the button, yeah, when that red light turns on, then you're ready to go. Please tell us your name and address, and then whatever you need to say.
Okay, my name is Matt Petty. I live at 100 West Beech Nut. It is the corner of Sioux and Beech Nut. I got a letter from Mr. Clark that my trailer is not parked on a hard surface. So I guess I'm making a motion to get rock and gravel added as a hard surface. My understanding at this time it only exists as concrete and or pavers.
Okay. Is that Paul? Is that how does it work? Yeah.
So hard surface, current definition, an impervious surface or a permeable pavement, comma, including asphalt, comma, concrete, and or landscape pavers.
Pavers. And you would like to use
I have landscape rock
landscape rock
on mine
Okay.
currently.
Okay. Well, since this is not an agenda item, we can't discuss it right now, but thanks for bringing it to our attention so that we can discuss it at our next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maybe just follow up with Patrick next week and have him put it on the agenda for a discussion item.
Very good. Anyone else? Okay, we'll continue on our agenda. So we have new business. We have a rezoning application for 108 West Park Street. And who is here to address that? Huh? Or on? Yeah. Okay, should we have staff first kind of explain the situation?
Sure,
And then
this
we'll take
this
comments.
application is to rezone the Alliance property located at just to the west of the intersection of Park and Sioux at 108 West Park. It's been in front of you before. Planning and Zoning Commission approved the rezone application from NRC, I think right now, to GB, which would allow the construction of a wireless tower with a conditional use permit. City Council denied the rezone application at a subsequent hearing.
Okay, and now the applicant is back, asking
To rezone again.
to rezone
Correct.
again, which he's allowed to do.
Yep.
Right? Okay, and is there anyone from the company who is, yep, come on up. And please give us your name and address and then whatever you need to say.
I'm Craig Snyder with Elevated Towers. My address is 2309 St. Peter Circle in Sioux Falls.
I am Shelley Ishins with Elevated Towers. My address is 1012 Riverview Court in Watertown, South Dakota.
So we are here this evening. Thank you for allowing us to come back. Good to see some familiar faces again. To ask once again that the property owned by Alliance be approved for the rezoning to allow for a telecommunications tower. This body approved that application last time, several months ago. As you are, I'm sure, very aware, the city council rejected the application on the basis that it was spot zoning and didn't feel it was appropriate to be zoned with that argument. I have some packets I would like to hand out. Is that okay?
Sure. Is that a duplicate of this? Or- Okay. Oh, I see. Maps.
Okay. I don't know if the Planning and Zoning Board has already decided how they're going to vote on this. I can save you a lot of time if you have, but if the vote is no, I'm going to go into some detail. So if you'll just bear with me, I'll be going into some detail tonight, if that's okay. All right. So first, there is a letter. Did I give you one that says Craig at the top? Did I give anyone one that says Craig at the top?
No, like in,
Oh, here it is. Thank you. Thank you, Shelley. So first, you're seeing a letter that was written by our president, who couldn't be here tonight, Jonas Snyder. His wife is undergoing a medical procedure, and so he sent Shelley and I. We're all partners in Elevated Tower, just so everyone is aware. There's a letter to the city council that outlines why we think both the planning, zoning, and eventually the city council should reconsider this zoning. I just thought I'd go through with you each of the main points of that letter. So if you look at the overview, we just wanted to point out first that this wasn't the only site we've looked at. And the planning and zoning knows that because you looked at all the land available and that kind of thing. We've looked at several sites, and I'll touch base on those in a minute. But we think this is probably the best site to cover cell coverage in the south side of town. As you might be aware, there's a tower on the north side of town near the interstate in an industrial park. That tower has two of the three major carriers. The three major carriers are Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. So the tower on the north has T-Mobile and AT&T on it. And then the Verizon site is on the water tower next to the high school. Those towers have been in the city for many, many years and service the city pretty well, but are becoming less and less sufficient to service the entire city because of growth in both population and probably even more so growth in data consumption by the public. So just to give you some idea of how much data is used wirelessly, it averages about 22 gigabytes of data per user per month. That's a fourfold increase since 2019, and a 25-fold increase since 2014. So just imagine you're on your phone, you're either talking, you're texting, you're on social media, you're even streaming videos, some people are even gaming. All of those things have to connect to a tower, and there's these wireless signals that go back and forth between the tower and your phone, and that data is just going up and up and up. And it's projected to just keep going up at these kind of exponential rates in the coming years. So there's more and more of a demand by the citizens of Brandon for data. Most data or wireless data comes through your phone, and now they have fixed wireless devices. You can put a little device in your house and replace Midco, or I don't know who's in Alliance maybe in town, but the other kind of data comes through fiber optic cables or coaxial cables. But whenever you're wireless, it comes through one of those two towers. And from what I understand, the city does not like the wireless on the water tower, so they're going to have to relocate when that lease is up sometime in the near future, which is going to mean they're either going to have to go on that other tower, which is further north from the water tower, or find an alternative site. And that's where we come in. The other thing about one tower, even if one tower works right now and you say, hey, most of the time I pick up my phone, it works pretty good, but you need redundancy because a tower can go down, a fiber can get cut, power can be lost, other maintenance things, lightning, all kinds of things that cause outages. So if you only have one tower and that tower goes down, there's no backup. You're using towers way out on the outskirts of Brandon. You no longer have 3 or 4 or 5 bars of coverage in Brandon. You might have 1 bar of coverage on a tower over between Sioux Falls and Brandon. So redundancy with infrastructure is also critical. If any kind of infrastructure, you need redundancy. You have a main road, and then you have side roads, and then you have other side roads and other main roads. Redundancy is important in wireless as well. Towers are also used for 911. Almost every call that's placed to 911 is done through a cell phone now. You don't pick up your home. Most people don't even have landlines. So the fire and rescue and police and everyone else rely on these towers for when people make emergency calls. Single point of failure there, again, you don't have 911 service. So let's talk just a little bit about our site selection process. If you'll turn to that map that I put in your packet, you'll see that we looked at several sites. So part of the process before we came in front of this committee or this board several months ago was to point out that there was no good zoning in Brandon for towers. There was very few options for placing towers. And you guys kind of ran us through the ringer, which was great, asked a lot of questions, and eventually decided, it's probably good that we write a zoning ordinance. We were here to help guide you in that process. You created an ordinance, but it still only allows for limited spaces to place a tower because of setbacks with homes and because of setbacks in other ways, and also just because of the zoning use. So if you look at each of those little yellow push pins, all of those are places that we approached the landowners and said, would you be interested in a tower? Tower number 1, the landowner was interested, but it was zoned R2, R3, and towers are not permitted. Tower number 2 is on the Oak Ridge Nursery site, and it was rejected because National Environmental Protection Act and State Historic Protection Organization said, due to its proximity to the burial mounds, that it could not be permitted there. Tower number 3, the landlord declined to sign a lease, and the site is zoned NRC and includes residences anyway, disqualifying that site. Tower number 4, multiple years of negotiations, including our company's highest ever offer. This is the Huset's property. They don't want it, and they weren't even willing to take a very high offer for the site. They got their own reasons. That's okay. Every landowner has their reasons. Tower number 5 is also owned by the Huset's ownership, and again, they're not interested in a tower. Other sites outside city limits fail to provide adequate coverage to get those 3 and 4 and 5 bars of coverage into the population of Brandon. So if we go even further south of the burial mounds, or down in the river valley, or east, you can't go much east because you got the Sioux River recreational area, and then you get too far east. You've got to get the tower close enough to the people to make it work. So with all those things in mind, as you'll see from this map, and if you're aware of your zoning, there's just not a lot of other options. So that brings us to the option that we're asking for rezoning on, which is a nice little parcel next to a floodplain. It has the adequate setback from the homes. It's already used as an infrastructure, a communication site. It's where the fiber optic cables come into the city and then spider out to all the homes and businesses. So it's got good connectivity for towers. Is a willing landowner, and it would be, we think, the best alternative for the south side of town that's available. And we've asked others, like, show us something else that's available, and we're all ears. But so far, we haven't been able to find anyone that's interested, and there's nothing in the city or no other landowners that are willing. So, okay, addressing health concerns. So we understand the concerns were raised regarding potential radio frequency emissions and their proximity to residential areas and schools. And while these concerns are understandable, the Telecommunications Act of 1996 expressly prohibits state and local governments from denying the placement of wireless facilities on the basis of RF emissions, provided the facilities comply with FCC standards, which this one does. To further ensure transparency, community confidence, we have agreed to commission an independent third-party RF study to evaluate the proposed tower emissions. This study would be conducted in accordance with FCC guidelines, which are based on decades of research by public health and safety experts, and we feel very confident the findings will confirm that the emissions from the proposed site are far below the limits established. Now let me just talk about a little bit of the practical reality for this city. You have a tower right next to your high school that has had wireless on it since 1997. My company put the stuff on there. There are not zombies walking out of your high school with their mouths hung open, feeling like they have headaches. It doesn't happen. This whole world is filled with towers. The city of Sioux Falls, every city, all your sister cities, Harrisburg, Lenox, all these cities have towers. It is not adversely affecting the health of the public. There are always things you can find on the internet, guys. And you can find them in other countries, and you can find studies, but who knows what's causing those things? Is it tower emissions? Is it the drinking water? Is it vaccines? Is it, who knows? The point being, I'm sure you're going to hear tonight that we don't want those emissions because it's going to hurt our children. The children are not being hurt. There's towers next to schools. Many schools, including Ben Rifle and Sioux Falls, literally put a tower on their premise because they're not afraid of it. And they want the revenue, perhaps. I don't know. That's them. But there's many schools with football stadiums that they replace a light pole and they put a tower up. It's unproven, and it's not legal to not allow towers for that reason. Okay. So, yeah, legal practice considerations. It cites the section in the 1996 Telecommunications Act. Now, let me talk a little bit about spot zoning. So if you turn to your next document, it talks a little bit about spot zoning. You can read it when you have time, but I'll summarize. It's not defensible by the city of Brandon or any other body to deny spot zoning for the reason it was denied last time. It has to have if the zoning serves a public purpose and it meets all the other requirements, you can't say, we don't think that spot zoning is available. And let's just be practical. There is no other property on the south side of Brandon that will allow a tower. So it's not really spot zoning, it's zoning for a purpose. And what we would argue is a good purpose. I would encourage you to read that because it will become a legal matter if it's used again without justification. And the law states the justification needs to be put in writing. So the city of Brandon is going to have to defend itself in writing if they decide to once again deny the permit based on spot zoning. And I have never sued a city yet, and I don't plan to, but I'm asking you to not push it to that point, because even if my company doesn't make it a legal matter, Verizon will, trust me. And they got big guns and they can outlast Brandon. There will be another tower in Brandon. There'll probably be 2, and there'll probably be 3 in the next 3, 5, and 10 years. So all you're really doing by denying the zoning tonight, if you decide to do that, is delaying the inevitable. You'll need those towers. You want those towers. There'll be people here to say they don't want them, but even they want those towers, or at least they want the data that those towers provide. And Shelley, anything? Do you have any questions for me or us?
I think you mentioned this too, but the letter says that you've agreed to commission an independent third-party RF study. What's the timeline or the process for doing that?
Do you know, can you answer that, Shelley?
Yes, so we have commissioned a gentleman with Owl Engineering out of Minneapolis. His name is Gary Lysak, and he will be present on Monday at our meeting and can attest to the concerns that the public has in regards to health. But we would be able to have the study available relatively quickly. And like I said, the testing is going to show that if you walked into the high school where the internet equipment is, you're going to get a higher RF reading than you are at where the tower's located.
Let me give you some perspective on RF emissions. So you've all lived in the shadows of the Rowena towers since you were born. A TV antenna puts out 1 gigawatt. That's 1 million watts of power. An FM station that you tune in, you know, your favorite station is, I know what mine is, but puts out 100,000 watts of effective radiated power. And when you hear the word radiated or radiation, it's non-ionizing radiation. It is not the same as a nuclear reactor or something like that. Do you know how much RF a cellular antenna puts out? For some perspective, 100 watts. 100, 100,000, 1 million. You've been in the shadow of Rowena Towers where you have TV and FM stations your entire life, cranking out 1 million watts. And I think, well, we never know. Maybe one of you is sicker than you need to be because of that. But there is no evidence to show that those antennas are hurting you, nor is there any evidence to show that your phone is hurting you. When you put your phone up to one of those meters, it will set it off more than the tower 1,000 feet away, we'll set it off with about a half a watt. So give you some perspective. Anyway, sorry, I hope that answered your question. You want any follow-up? We're happy to.
Should we hear from the public and then maybe we can have?
If you like, yeah, we're ready for
All right,
that.
we'll come back if you
Certainly.
need us.
Sure, so anyone from the public out there who wants to speak to this, come on up. I think the red light at the microphone is still on, so it's still live. Please say your name and address, and then about 5 minutes tops. Okay.
Great. Good evening. My name is Megan Penning. I live at 1301 South Fernwood Avenue in Brandon. I would love to come and address everything that was talked about today already. It was a lot, so I'm just going to go with what I've already prepared. I'm here today to voice my concerns for the proposed rezoning of 108 Park Street for the purpose of constructing the wireless telecommunications tower. I'd like to be abundantly clear that I'm not opposed to a cell phone tower being added to our city. I'm concerned only with the location that is being pursued. As you all know, 108 Park Street is a small lot currently zoned as NRC. The land surrounding includes a detention pond, many residential homes, some less than 300 feet away, an elementary school, and an intermediate school. And for that reason, our Brandon City Council voted no just 5 months ago. Besides our City Council finding this location unfit for a rezone change, our community has already made it very clear that a cell phone tower is not wanted in this particular location. Last May, I made an informal online petition asking for the relocation of this tower and was quickly able to gather more than 150 names, and I have that petition available to share. Now, although the city advertises these public hearings, the real job of informing the public has fallen on a couple of parents. I feel certain that had all parents of our school, as well as the residents of the neighborhood, been notified directly, that there would have been even greater pushback on this proposal. But regardless of that, many members of the community did show up and attend the city council meeting last May and voiced their concerns, and they were thankfully heard. I'm particularly thankful to our city council members who represent Ward 1, where this property resides, and to our city council member who understood our concern for our kids and our schools. I'm also thankful to the planning and zoning members here who expressed concern and asked thoughtful questions during their first meeting with Elevated Towers back in November. Their concern over the setbacks and the people who would be living close to the tower gave voice to my thoughts and concerns as well. I hope that all who represent the city can understand our concerns, or at least respect our wishes, regardless of if they represent this area, live in this area, or have kids who spend the majority of their days in this area. I'd like to make a special point, too, that the Brandon Valley School District has expressed that they have to remain neutral in these discussions. Their silence should not be construed as in favor or even okay with this proposal. They've played no part in informing parents or advocating for our concerns. They are, however, a major part of our city, and the reason so many moved to Brandon, including my own family. Even if they are unable to get involved in these discussions themselves, I hope the city seriously takes our schools into account and carefully weighs the risks of locating a tower at this property. Beyond any concerns of safety, we risk families, staff, and teachers leaving these schools based on the perception alone. Although a wireless telecommunication tower would serve the south side of Brandon, and I understand that's the goal and the intent of the city, it's the will of the citizens who reside here that we do not want it located at 108 Park Street, so near our homes and our schools. We are the taxpayers and the residents who live here. It would not be logical to ignore and go against the wishes of the citizens here while trying to serve them in one fell swoop. And fortunately, I believe we don't have to choose one over the other. We don't have to choose increased connectivity over the integrity of our neighborhood and safety of our residents. We can have both by choosing an alternate location. I think we just need some creativity. At the very least, the residents of this neighborhood and parents and staff of our schools deserve to know that the city has explored and pursued each and every possible location before moving forward with this proposal. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Could I just ask a quick question while you're here, just to have your point of view?
Yes.
With the location, it is about 400 feet from a school. And so that's certainly, now, we only allow, we go to the property line, not the structure for our zoning. What distance are you, what are your concerns? What areas would you like to see? What kind of buffers?
Well, I think Erin can speak to that. She's looked up what other cities have done as far as distance away. My concern with the distance from the school in general was that the setbacks are to the property line of the school, and yet it's neglecting the streets and the sidewalks that are used. As far as me sitting in the pickup line at school, you know, if you're caring about how far this thing falls, if it falls, that also should be considered just by logic.
We did consider that. We've had our meetings about falling, tower falling, so just so you're aware, we did have that discussion.
Yes, I've watched a lot of the meetings, and I knew that was a concern. And I appreciate that you're concerned about falling on buildings or anything like that, but do city sidewalks and streets not factor into that?
What if a street light fell down? Or
Right.
a street light or stoplight, anything. I mean, you go on the street every day with a car too, and you can get in an accident, so.
Yeah, we can. We can play that game with anything, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
During your neighbor discussions, were you able to identify any site in Brandon where you thought would be a better location?
We've been very curious about Aspen Park. I know it's been brought up in a lot of the meetings, and it seems to just be a talking point, but hasn't gone any further as far as I know. It makes sense to me as a resident that it's away from homes. There's already the tall lights for the baseball fields where it would blend in a little better. City-owned property.
I guess my question on that, consistency-wise, is Aspen Park has a lot of kids there.
Right. My thought on that is we use our parks several months of the year as a cold weather state, and our kids are there 40 hours a week for 9 months of the year. And at that point, it's your choice to go to the park. Our children are required by law to go to school.
And I'm just asking, because
Yeah,
that's
I
what
appreciate
we're going
it.
to be asked to. So.
Yeah, I appreciate the questions. And thank you for letting me speak. Okay, thank you.
My name is Erin Taggart, and I live at 1900 West Tyler Circle in Brandon. And I'm here tonight because I care deeply about the health and safety of our children and our community. And I understand the importance of reliable wireless service, but also just gearing towards the emergency service. The 911 can be placed in SOS mode with no service. So if that's a concern, those calls can still go through. But I do understand wireless, reliable service, but I'm asking that we use caution before approving to rezone 108 West Park Street for a cell tower, which would be built within 85 feet of the property line of RBE. So I went on to the Minnehaha site to measure this. So from the property line of 108 to the property line of RBE is 85 feet. To the RBE building itself is 373 feet. And to the northeast side of the intermediate school is 928 feet. And this is approximately 1,300 students spend their day, 8 hours a day. And that's not including teachers, staff, and the large residential area around there. The federal safety standards that cities rely on for this, the FCC, were established in 1996. So that was nearly 30 years ago. I was still in high school nobody had cell phones. So we're still using the same guidelines. And those guidelines were based on research from the 80s and early 90s, long before anybody had smartphones, Wi-Fi, or 5G networks. Since then, there has been thousands of new studies that have looked at long-term effects, and the long-term effects especially for children. But the FCC has never updated its limits to reflect that science. In 2021, a federal court ruled that the FCC did not provide reasonable, evidence-based justification for keeping these 1996 radio frequency radiation limits. The court ordered the FCC to review modern research, which there's thousands of studies out there. This lawsuit argued that these guidelines were outdated due to the new research and widespread increase in wireless technology. And as of today, 4 years later, the FCC has not completed this task. The research, they have not provided any updated research or guidelines from 1996. So until that happens, I don't think we can trust these old limits to truly protect our children who would be exposed every day less than 1,000 feet away. So I'm not asking to stop technology. I'm just asking for reasonable placement. Choose another location that's farther away from schools and homes where the exposure would be lower. And according to the Environmental Health Trust, which it is a nonprofit research and educational group, the minimum distance to schools should be 500 meters, which would be 1,640 feet away from schools or hospitals. And we have the ability and the responsibility to take a precautionary approach until the science catches up. So let's make a decision to protect our kids first and not rezone an area until we have more research and evidence.
Thank you. There was a meeting that, the maps with the circles, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so we did request our city engineer to make a map of the town with places where, you know, where it was full of circles, little circles and big circles, overlapping circles, where you could maybe, where a tower might work, where it wouldn't work. There were very few places on that map where a tower would work. I don't remember an exact number, but it was dismal. It was not very many. The map should be in the packet of that meeting, but I don't remember the date of that meeting, but the meetings are on the, if you ever want to look at it, might take a little while to find it. But the meetings are on, all the packets from the Planning and Zoning Commission from this year and last year are on the Brandon website. I'm just trying to look for it while you're talking, but I haven't been able to get to it, so. Just to let you know, they are there, and all of our meetings are recorded and put up on YouTube. So if you would want to hear, if you figure out what meeting that is, and you want to go listen to us talk about that at the meeting that night, you can watch that discussion on YouTube, just for your information. And thank you very much. I know that we are prohibited by law from taking emissions into consideration. And I don't know we have to follow the law.
Yeah, and I don't know if
However,
that still is.
If you'd like to write a letter with your opinion to the Federal Communications Commission or to Senator Thune, Senator Rounds, or Representative Johnson, that would be a good start for anybody who is interested in seeing the what do I want to say, not statistics, the parameters. To anybody who's interested in seeing the parameters changed or reevaluated, those would be the places to start. Would be Thune, Rounds, Johnson, FCC. We're a little city in South Dakota. We can't make the decisions for the country. We have to follow the law. But thank you very much for coming in and speaking.
One more question.
Sure.
Just, if this does get approved, I'm just curious who would be legally and financially liable of any health, negative health effects? It's very important that the community understands who's accountable for this. Is it the city, the tower, who owns the land, or us taxpayers?
Your lawyers might be the best people to advise you on that. I also need to mention that in this case, the Planning and Zoning Commission is an advisory board to the city council. So we will vote to either recommend to the city council a do pass or a do not pass. So, and then the city council will then make the final decision. Okay, and that's how that works. Right. Is this, Brian, I have a question.
What was the part you said about hospitals?
So they recommend children and hospitals that cell phone towers should not be within the 500 meters, 1,600 feet from.
In Sioux Falls, there's a cell phone tower on top of Rivera and on top of Sanford.
Yep.
Verizon one for sure on both. Just putting that out there.
Brian, Reed, I have a question for you. If we vote on this tonight and make our recommendation to city council tonight, when would city council hear that and vote on it?
Scheduled for public hearing for the first reading of the ordinance Monday.
This coming
Yep, that's
Monday,
usually what we do.
the 20th, yeah.
The council meeting immediately after P and Z, the first reading goes on that agenda.
Okay,
Now, you also have to remember, wireless cell phone tower in the GB district is a conditional use. So even if the property is rezoned, the applicant needs to come back to obtain a conditional use to actually construct the tower.
okay. So they would, city council would have a first reading on October 20, and then they would have a second reading
Correct,
as well.
correct. Typically at the next meeting, which would be the first Monday in November.
The 3rd of November.
Yep. And then the ordinance would be published the following week in the paper, and then would go into
And that
effect
would be on a
20
Thursday,
days.
yeah.
It would go into effect 20 days after publication.
And then you said then, conditional use permit must be requested, and would they have to wait until after that
Correct,
rezoning goes into effect?
correct.
So we're looking for the conditional use permit would not be, we couldn't even look at the conditional use permit until probably Thanksgiving. And then that has to go, does that have to go to the city council then too?
No,
No.
not necessarily, unless
Okay.
there's an appeal.
Okay,
It would go to the city council, but looking at the schedule, the second reading on the ordinance would be November 3rd. It'd be published in the paper on November 12th. It would go into effect December 3rd.
December 3rd, okay. So if everything passes and goes through, we would probably see a conditional use request in December. So, just to let you know, to let you folks and anybody who happens to be listening on YouTube also, we're not live on YouTube, but it'll be up on the site here pretty quick, the next couple of days.
Thank you for your
Just-
time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming in. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Yep, maybe any new information that, yeah.
I kind of want to talk about Aspen Park, like
Sure.
what would be required.
Okay, could you tell us your name and address, please?
Jonathan Penning from 1301 South Fernwood Avenue here in
Okay.
Brandon. So I guess maybe that's a question on, it looked like on the coverage maps that they showed, it kind of only covered the very south part of that Brandon. So it looked like still up by Casey's and between Blessed Redeemer and Casey's, there was poor coverage. And that was with a 120-foot tower, and I think they're only putting a 90-foot tower in, so that doesn't even, that'd get worse. So Aspen Park is more centrally located in the city. I don't know what would be, has the city even looked at possibly putting one there?
Well, Elevated Towers is a company that is requesting to bring the
Okay.
city, yeah, because the city doesn't build them. We're not, city isn't in the business of building towers, right? So, I mean, we could ask the person from Elevated Towers if they have considered or requested to. Can we come to the microphone, please? Yes.
So a little bit about the way that RF works. People that are much smarter than Craig and myself figure out how to make all of this work within our infrastructure. And they give us an area and they say, this is where we need to have it to make it work. And so the maps that you look at may show coverage that you don't necessarily understand what it's covering. It may make the service better within the buildings. That you're fine when you're driving on your phone and outside and can see it, but when you go into a building and you don't have service. So it's correct. And so when we had done that, and then everything was pinpointed down, and as we work through things, just like with the property that is to the, just outside of the school, that's actually in the county, if there weren't burial mounds, we wouldn't be here, the tower would be up. There would be no say, there would be no input, it would be done, and you could have a tower that was 100 feet from the school, and there would be nothing. So the way that this works is, people that are smarter than us pick the area where we can look. And this is the location that works based on everything else that we've had to try. And when you go back through these, there's other studies with the federal government and the state governments that dictate where we are also allowed to put facilities at.
Okay, thank you.
A comment as far as the Aspen Park, been mentioned a couple times, and this is granted just from my memory, so take that for what it's worth. It's just discussion. It didn't result in a ordinance change, but I do recall that we at some point discussed the possibility of the institutional zone, which is a zone that a lot of our parks are being rezoned to, and schools and different things. So there was some, by my recollection, some discussion of that at a point, and we got into things like saying, well, we wouldn't, parks of a certain size because small neighborhood parks, weren't really something that seemed to be very good for that, but larger parks, yes. So anyway, I think there was some discussion of that, but it hasn't borne any fruit at this point, and there would be a lot to consider there too, because then that, in at least many cases, literally, that zone includes schools, school sites, so.
Yeah, institutional zoning can include schools.
And churches.
Yes, and churches, yeah. And,
And currently,
yeah, go ahead.
currently, we don't allow towers in institutional, right? So that's not an option at this time, right?
As a conditional use permit.
Is it under conditional use? Okay.
Yeah,
I
I didn't
thought I
think-
saw it was like anything over 5 acres you can put it on, so.
yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if that was considered by Elevated Towers, but I think the community is asking you to think about other locations that serve the city better.
Every time we've discussed parks, they seem to be very defensive with towers in the park, so I think this room would just be full of different people, honestly, if we brought that up. I think it'd be the same discussion with different people.
That's what we've seen in the past.
Okay.
But thanks. Did
Thank
you have anything else?
No, that's all I have.
Thank you. Certainly. Come on in. Come on up.
Craig Snyder again, just a couple of maybe rebuttals to some of the arguments. First, just as a reminder, you're not even really allowed to consider RF emissions, and that's mostly what we're talking about tonight. I think you know that, but just as a reminder. Secondly, safety. So like maybe the tower is going to fall over. And like Mr. Schoeneman talked about, there's all kinds of structures that are built that overhang all kinds of things, power poles, light poles, traffic lights. They're built to standards so they don't fall and hurt the public. So are telecommunications towers. They're built to very high standards. They don't fall except for in extreme conditions like tornadoes, when a lot of things go down, including houses and schools. So just so everyone is aware, the tower will not be any more of a hazard to the driving under public or the walking under public of almost any other elevated structure. I'm not even going to talk much more about RF other than just to say you're voting on rezoning, you know that tonight, and there's a lot more steps that come ahead of rezoning. We appreciate that you voted in favor of that rezoning last time, and we would kindly ask you to do that again, and so that we can move forward with progress for Brandon. And to you, mothers, I'm sorry, I might be feeling like the ogre tonight. I appreciate you very much. I have a wife, I have daughters. I understand the concerns that come with all kinds of things that are we have to deal with in life, with safety and in the public. I'm just going to argue that towers are not one of those things, or RF emissions from cell phone towers in particular are not one of those things that are something we need to worry too much about. It's settled, and it is an act of Congress. It hasn't been altered yet. So we just have to kind of go with that. That's all I have.
I have one question. When Jonah Snyder, your partner, came in months ago and started talking to us about that, a tower might fall over. That was something we took seriously, and it was something we talked about a lot when we were talking about setbacks and whatnot. And I remember something Mr. Snyder told us that was these towers don't fall over like this. They collapse down like this.
Yeah,
Is that,
they can be engineered to collapse
yeah,
like that.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, they're not, because they're designed for 120 mile an hour winds with half-inch radial ice at a 1.25 safety factor. So really more like probably 150 mile an hour winds with 3/4 of inch of radial ice, which is like a 500-year event or something like that. But yes, you're correct. They can be designed that way.
okay.
If we ever get to that point and the city council says they want it designed that way, we'll have it designed that way. But I think that is honestly the least of your concerns, or the public's should be.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Would anyone else like to? If not, then we'll consider discussion here among the planning and zoning commissioners.
So we talked about how it wouldn't come back for conditional use until December. That report or study that you would get back would be back in time for any type of conditional use, so we could use that to determine? Yes. Okay. Thank you. Other question is, so city council united on spot zoning. Do we have a rule on what is considered spot zoning? Like how far from other general business? Is there a rule or a distance?
There's not. Spot zoning is very similar to a hardship on a variance, and you know how difficult it is to define a hardship. So spot zoning typically is, if it's not contiguous with other existing or similar zones, it is. You also need to remember that according zoning districts to not allow a tower. So just like you can't zone out of the town an adult entertainment venue, you have to allow them in some zone.
I was just looking, like, on the map, there's general business down in that Oak Ridge Nursery area, so I was wondering if there was a distance for a spot zone. If that's what they denied it on the last time.
Thought about maybe we should put something in there, but that was just a thought at 2 o'clock last.
Well,
We
I-
can add it to Patrick's list.
I have a question also. The lot that the company here is requesting is owned by Alliance, yes, thanks. So it's being used for business purposes already, that particular lot, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
And last time, when we approved the rezone, a lot of the discussion tonight really falls under the, and I know that this is the reason that it's happening, but a lot of this falls under the conditional use aspect of it. For the rezone, if the towers weren't involved, I think that property should be rezoned anyway, because it doesn't meet the current zoning guidelines, or ordinance, or whatever you wanna call it. The lot is too small for NRC, doesn't meet the setbacks for NRC, doesn't meet the use for NRC, so, if you separate the two things, this property, in my opinion, should be rezoned general business anyway. The conditional use is another argument, and I respect having the argument tonight, because we all know where this is going. But, I really feel like that is more the conditional use argument. If the tower wasn't going there, it should be rezoned general business anyway.
Yeah. Is there any other comment, discussion, questions among the among the commissioners?
How we, how do I say, when a new development comes into us now, if that drainage was not there, that would have been general business, as it would come in now, how we would want them to label that. Because how we step from general business to R3, R2, R1, going into neighborhoods off of, I don't know, what do you want, is that a artillery street?
No, not artillery. Arterial, thank you.
I would make a motion to recommend to city council to do pass on the rezone application.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to recommend to city council a due pass on the rezoning application. All in favor, say aye.
Could we get a roll call?
Okay, yes, we can take a roll call vote. Okay?
Megan,
Aye.
Brooks,
Aye.
Rob, Alyssa,
Aye.
Mike.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thank you. So, city council will look at it this coming Monday.
Correct.
October 20, in this room, and the meeting starts at what time?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. So, thank you. Next item on our agenda. I put my thing away, so I have to get it out again. And you're all welcome to stay. You're all welcome to stay.
We're okay with that.
All right. So, where we are here. So we are on a discussion item,
Yes.
appeal Board of Adjustment decision to City Council. So Brian, fill us in on what this is.
Well, I think as you're all aware, the Planning and Zoning Commission denied a recent variance request for a deck, or I shouldn't say a deck, a three-season porch in a rear yard. The applicant appealed that to the city council, and the city council overturned the Planning and Zoning Commission's decision and granted the variance. So, Patrick and I had some discussions. Let me back up a second. During the meeting, City Attorney Marso explained or attempted to explain what a hardship is, which we all know is fairly difficult to understand, and how that is granted, or what defines a hardship or uniqueness about a property or something like that. So in the current regulation for an appeal to the city council by the applicant if it's denied, it just says they can take action to overturn or grant it, support it, or send it back to you for reconsideration. What Patrick and I talked about was, do we want to include some type of language in there that would require the city council to go through the same somewhat frustrating exercises you folks have to do in granting a variance and describing what the hardship is and or the uniqueness of the property instead of just voting yes or no on the appeal. So that language is on page 14 in the green. About what, 3/4 of the way down that paragraph says, in order to overturn or modify a denial of a variance application by the Board of Adjustment, the city council shall consider the determining factors considered by the Board of Adjustment as outlined in chapter 1524-F. It shall only overturn or modify a variance application denied by the Board of Adjustment if it makes specific affirmative findings that all determinative factors have been met. So it's basically the same process you have to go through. I think the form, at least in my mind, the form would be very shorter than your multi-page one. It just basically having to say, what's the hardship and or what's unique about the parcel. So, we certainly understand the frustration that comes with council overturning a decision. So this is just kind of, and we haven't talked to the council about this at all yet. We wanted to bring it to you folks first, see if you'd be interested in at least discussing it. You know, the only other modification that we could do, I shouldn't say could do, but there may be others. A lot of cities don't have the appeal to the city council in their variance process. It's either it's approved or denied, and if you don't like the answer, you take it to district court. So, I mean, there's that possibility too, that we just get rid of the appeal altogether.
Are other city, planning and zoning members, appointed, or are they voted?
They're all appointed by the.
I mean, other city, I'm not talking just our city, but like.
In other cities.
In other cities, are most of them all appointed, or are some voted in?
No, I don't know of any planning and zoning commissions that are voted in.
Brian Heiderbrink always, not to speak for him, but he talks that way a lot, that we're appointed, they're the ones who have been voted in, so we're a recommending board, and they should be the final
Correct.
decision to appoint. Because
Correct.
they're the ones who, the people were told to be in there.
Yeah, I don't know, like I said, I've never been associated with a planning and zoning commission that's elected. Every P and Z commission is appointed. And a lot of times you have separate planning and zoning commissions and Board of Adjustment,
Yeah. And
which to me doesn't make any sense.
when we decide on a variance request, we do that as a Board of Adjustment.
Correct.
So we are the final word on that.
I mean, it's hard enough.
Those can be appealed to the city council.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah, so we're not
appeal isn't the same as, you know, the second step in an approval
No,
process.
I-
Mike's correct in that if the applicant doesn't like or an aggrieved person doesn't like the decision of the Board of Adjustment, they can appeal that decision to the city council. So ultimately, the city council, and the applicant can even take it a step further and take it to district court after the city council hearing. So the courts are the ultimate decider if somebody chooses to go that route. The only one that I am aware of, nope. If that wasn't zoning, that was. Yes, it was. There's been two that I know of. No, no, they look at the rules that are in place, and actually the courts have established their definition of a hardship. So that's set precedent, so they follow that. The other thing that most courts do, they probably give more weight to a government decision unless they determine it's arbitrary. Yeah, the two that I'm aware of, 1500 East Birch took us to court on a setback or for his garage. We granted him a permit, and it should have had a variance. He came in, got the variance was denied. He took us to court. Court threw it out, or I shouldn't say threw it out, ruled in the city's favor. The only other one that I'm aware of is there is a garage. This is a long time ago, so predates me. There we go. It's a rear yard on Redwood. That is.
I know that one.
It's in North Crestview Circle. There's a garage that was built, I think, too close to the rear property line. Actually, it's the front property line. I believe that property owners took the city to court and won. Those are the only two that I know of.
My memory of that, because I was around then, is that the court ruled that, the city argued that there should not be a driveway on a collector road. Is that the right term, collector?
Yeah, it's an arterial, so I think we
Arterial
argued
road.
that there shouldn't be a driveway on
And
the
that
arterial.
the city comp plan did not address that. The city was in the process, I was on planning zoning at that time. The city was planning and zoning was in the process of updating their comp plan at that time. And so the judge said, I was not in the room, but when the judge made the decision, but this is my memory of what I was told. The judge said, the city said, well, our comp plan is going to say that you can't have a driveway on an arterial road. And the judge said, but is your comp plan in effect right now? No, we're updating it right now. So, no. But
Very similar to.
the city did have a comp plan that said that at the time. That's the comp plan we were in the process of updating.
Very
So,
similar
but-
to the ladies' discussion that
Yeah.
some of the FCC rules have been, or court has ruled that,
Yeah.
but nothing's in place yet to replace the 96 legislation. So
Yeah.
unless it's done, approved,
Yep.
published, et cetera,
Yep.
it's not in effect. So those are the only two that I know of. From time to time, people do take zoning issues to court. thought this, like I said, we haven't talked to city council about it at all. So I'm not sure, if they'll be receptive to.
It seems logical that, I know our ordinances say that when the city council reviews an appeal, they cannot take into consideration any information that the planning and zoning had not heard.
Correct.
So the person can't bring any new information in. So that leads me to believe that the city council should be making their decision based on the same information that we use to make our determination, one of which is hardship. So I would be surprised, in fact, I am surprised that city council does not seriously take a hardship into consideration when they are looking at an appeal. Because they are supposed to follow, so I'm kind of glad that you've put this in writing. So I thought they were doing it that way already.
No, there's no requirement.
Okay.
Like I said, they can either confirm or overturn or send it back to you for further consideration. Is really the only thing that is required by the council.
They did that.
Not necessarily. Could be, see if you can find a legal loophole, so to speak. The other thing that a lot of people don't understand is zoning code is kind of its own language, I think you all agree with that. Scratch your head from time to time, what the heck does that mean? That's one thing I found in other communities where we had a different planning and zoning commission and board of adjustment. P and Z worked with it once or twice a month, so they were fairly, up to speed on what a conditional use is and setbacks, et cetera. Board of Adjustment only met when necessary. So, 2 or 3 times a year. So trying to explain to non-board members or Board of Adjustment, they just don't understand the language.
A little bit of that going that way with city council to a point.
There is, and I'll compliment the Board of Adjustment. You guys are very good at considering variances, walking through the process. You understand what a hardship is, what makes a property unique. A lot of times, and I'm not saying necessarily here, but, if there's a separate Board of Adjustment, usually you might know the applicant. They might be a nice person. They might be a great neighbor or even a friend. And it's very difficult to say no.
In
To
smaller
somebody.
towns,
It's extremely difficult.
it's very likely to happen that, that somebody's applying as
So
somebody
if you're comfortable with this, or you want some modifications, let us know. Otherwise, we'll probably at least start discussions with the city council, maybe next month.
For myself, yes, please.
I would welcome the discussion as well. I mean, I get that, and kind of the way I think about it, which is just my own way, my terminology, I think of us as a kind of a technical board and look at things in a certain way. And I know there's differences, and I get that there's a reason for certain things to be looked at by the council or the opportunity to appeal. I get all that. So, but I do welcome this discussion because I think particularly talking about a variance with all that we consider and considering one, I think it's the part of it that sticks out to me, and I always paraphrase, and that's what I always try to keep in my mind, is that about the hardship is that basically should render the property unusable. And so that's
I'm
part
sorry,
that I
didn't
try to
hear,
keep in mind.
it should what? What, I didn't hear.
There's a part of that in our thing that we go through that it says that it, without the hardship should almost render the property unusable.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, without the variance.
Yeah, I mean, just not here, but in a previous community, the hardship that was stated in the application was the building inspector denied it. No, that's not a hardship.
We get, yeah. So I have a question about this particular one. All right, I know when we grant a variance, we need to list the hardship so that it's written down and on record for in the future, if somebody comes in with a similar request, we can point and he said, well, Bob got it, why can't I have it? Well, Bob's land is, on a 45-degree slant or whatever, but you can see it's written down there. In this particular case, the variance was granted. What will be written down there for the next person who wants to build a three-season room?
There won't be anything written down. The motion by the council was to grant the appeal. And that was it.
Okay, so how does that affect us then if or when the next person comes in and wants the same sort of thing and says,
Well, I think I've spouted off before that if you grant a variance without proving a hardship or uniqueness of the property, you're basically rewriting the zoning code pertaining to that variance.
Yeah.
So, does that same standard apply to the city council? They'd probably have to go through the same process.
okay,
A variance here, and then if P and Z or Board of Adjustment denies it, they could appeal it to the city council, and they would certainly bring that up. At least I would, if I was the applicant, to both Board of Adjustment and city council, hey, you guys granted it over here.
yeah.
So,
Jean Doe got one, why can't I have
Correct.
one?
Correct. So with this modification, in my mind, in essence, it creates that variance that was granted as a non-conforming use now.
Okay, so that would be our reply.
Because it was
then.
granted under the old regulations.
Yeah.
Just like if a setback is
Yeah.
changed, that allowed a 5-foot or 3-foot setback, because we got some of those, and then we increased that setback to 5, all of those buildings built to the 3-foot are now a non-conforming use.
Right.
You can't expand them, you can repair them, whatever, but you can't make it, you have to bring it into conformance. So same thing with this, I think it kind of wipes out that precedent,
Okay.
semi-precedent that was set.
So it might come down to the city council, where the applicant comes to the city council and says, but you granted Jane Doe one, and then the city council will have to say, yeah, whatever they say.
Well,
It might come back to bite the city council and,
Could.
yeah,
So, at least in my mind, and I'll talk to Patrick when he gets back from Oregon, I would probably like to see the process move forward to at least have a discussion with the city council, but probably have a joint meeting.
sure,
At least invite the planning and zoning commission into the city council meeting where we've got it on the agenda
sure.
to have that discussion. Or a separate one, if everybody wants a separate one too, we could have a special meeting, but I think there should be a joint meeting between the two bodies.
Very good.
Just a thought. And I wouldn't mind throwing out the whole thing, just make them appeal to district court either, so.
Well, there's that. Yeah.
I just throw it out there. I like the idea of having that requirement. More than anything, though, I just think that what the ordinance is and what they're asking outside of the ordinance, because that's really like, I guess this deck one, that the 3-season porch thing, that was, was unfortunate, but to expand it into a three-season porch, it's really no different than expanding it into an addition. Where do you cross the line? Our ordinance says you can go, and we do allow them to rebuild, the non-conformance, but we don't allow them to expand. Well, they just expanded it. How far do you expand now is my concern. The other one is the Quick Start sign, where we were in the process of working through it. I know Quick Start wanted it sooner. I wish that we could do things faster. But they took an ordinance that allowed a 30-foot sign, 200 square feet, and they made it 90 and 600 square feet. And it's kind of like, well, whoa, where do our ordinance, if we're going to change the ordinance, okay, let's change them. We'll work on that. But how far do we go at a time without discussion? That's, I guess, my concern. I know that there are times where something comes across that we can't find a hardship. Maybe it's okay that they can look at it a little different and say, well, this is a unique situation. It might not meet your hardship, but when you're going out that far outside of the ordinance to, I think that needs to be very clear that what they're doing is, I don't know how far you can go, I guess. Sometimes that's my concern.
And that's the reason for probably the vagueness of a hardship definition. It gives you a little wiggle room, but at the same time, you've got to prove something is making the property unusable as is. I use this as an example for a variance. You may think it's stupid, but I kind of like it. You get stopped for speeding, and you're on your way to work, and you're going 15 miles an hour over. The police officer has the discretion to write you a ticket or give you a warning. Well, if you got up late, that's your own fault. If you're speeding to the hospital because your wife's in labor, the cop's probably going to let you off and maybe even escort you to the hospital. So, in my mind, that's the difference between a hardship and not a hardship. There's a distinct reason why you're doing what you're doing. Not because you want to, because you have to. So, when you're putting a roof on a deck or enclosing a deck into a three-season porch, that's a want-to. Not have to.
Yeah, wasn't that deck already into the setback to
Correct.
begin with? Yeah.
And there are probably multiple properties in the city where, and I'm not saying we allowed it to happen, but the plans weren't followed. These houses were built 20, 30 years ago. Much different oversight was there. Did the city permit that house to be switched? Well, in essence, we kind of sort of did because we didn't stop them from construction, but at the same time, it's not that big of a deal because it met setbacks. So if you want to flip the house, it's not a big deal. Now, you should come back in and revise the plans, so we've got accurate plans in the files, but, and I can't recall if there was a permit pulled for the deck. I don't think the deck was on the original permit app. I can't remember.
And the applicant had the opportunity to make their three-season room smaller to conform to setbacks. I think, we write ordinances, I think of them as laws.
They are.
They are laws. I say a lot, I go, we have to follow the law. And if the law says the setbacks and whatnot, and you have to prove a hardship and everything, then we have to hold to that, and I would think the city council has to follow the law as well.
That's kind of what's unique about our system, because we have an appeal directly to the city council.
Yeah.
Most places don't. You're either approved or denied, and if you don't like the decision,
You go to the court. then the court decides what interprets the law.
Correct.
But but I hope that all the city council members know that they have to follow the law, just like we do.
Well, and I think this lays it out a little cleaner.
Yeah, I do like that.
And not to drag this out any longer, we've been here a while, but just back to what Michael was saying, like, there are times when we've seen, I think I've been on here just long enough, I can't remember a specific instance, but where we've had a variance application and we've probably approved something that was outside the zoning ordinance, but it leads to a discussion and it ultimately leads to a change in the ordinance.
Yeah.
And so, in the case of the sign that was mentioned, once that was, I can't remember the mechanism, how it, in our discussions about signs after that, I took that as sort of a mandate from the elected body of the city council that they were in favor of those signs. And so my discussions about the signing overlay district kind of adhered to that, because that's what I took it in that case. The elected body said, this is allowable.
Sure.
But sometimes there's a mechanism for how those become an ordinance.
Yeah.
In this most recent case, I don't see that, but sometimes yes.
And I know, like, you know, not to drag this out again, but like we had a couple people that came in, they wanted 2 driveways. That was, you know, one I can think of, and we're like, okay, how can we do this as an ordinance where it works? And so we wrote an ordinance that allowed it. But we have guidelines. We look at things. We don't just, you know, maybe we hash things out for too long, but we look at, you know, we try to get ahead of the problems that could be created rather than just, that's what they want. Sounds good, you know, so,
Well,
yeah. And that, you have to think about that, because you know that if there's a loophole, someone's gonna use it.
I have never seen a perfect zoning code.
No.
There's always somebody coming along with, ooh, hey, I
Well,
can do this.
And situations change, and the city's getting bigger, a lot of more people are moving in here. We knew that businesses in the I-90, thing there, the development, were going to have taller signs, we knew that. So we didn't have an ordinance that addressed that, so we had to do that. The two driveways, I was on a corner lot, right? Yeah. Yeah, so we looked really hard at what loopholes might exist, who might want this besides just the one person who's asking, who might want this and what we can do in the future. And like, Mike, you said earlier, when we were talking about the cell phone tower, you said in developments, we are asking now in developments to leave some commercial space up next to the road. And so if this neighborhood where the school is, were being built from scratch now, we would have asked for a lot, you know, for some part of it to be commercial. And, you know, so situations change, and so the laws have to change to accommodate that.
And
We know that.
fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which side of the eminent domain issue you're on, cell phone towers don't have the power of eminent domain.
Yeah.
So they can't compel a property owner to sell them the property if they
Yeah.
don't want to.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we could probably find places where individually we could say, oh, this would be a better spot for us or me or whatever, but somebody else is gonna have a problem with that. And I was very surprised that 2 people mentioned putting a tower in a park. I can't imagine that would go over very well at all, but I don't know, maybe that's something we need to consider.
I don't know.
But they're
It does-
permitted as conditional use.
Yeah, it does
It is
allow over 5 acres, that's right, so.
The city's still growing. We're going to need more towers than this, just the one we talked about tonight. We're going to need more towers, and as we look ahead, we need to make sure there are places we can put them.
And just so you know, the new water tower on the east side of town, as that's a conditional use in the county. And one of the conditions was that we cannot place a wireless tower on it.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, the neighboring residents were concerned.
Yeah.
We'll leave it at that. I'd have to look at the lease. It's probably got another 10 plus to go. I could pull it, but
Yeah.
it's,
So I
it
live.
is, and it's not that we won't renew it. It would just be very different terms. We would want our fair share of the revenue coming off of it, as well as if we paint the tower, we have to take their antenna